Dear students, I'm Dr. Jangres Khan, your course in charge for the subject of research methodology. In our today's lecture, we will discuss the basic concepts of sampling. We, you know that sampling is an important part of research, and the course of the research methodology is almost incomplete without the concept and the methodology of the sampling. So, before going into the detail of the sampling techniques, it is important to keep in mind the basic concept of sampling. Such type of concepts which are relevant to the sampling. For example, the population, the target population, sample, the statistic, the parameter, subject, element, etc. So, in this lecture, we will discuss the basic concepts relevant to the sampling. So, the first population, the first concept most relevant to sampling is population. Population refers to the entire group of people, events, or things of interest that the researcher wishes to investigate. Population consists of all those observations, all the people, or all the things, or all the events about which the researcher is entrusted to investigate a phenomena. For example, if a banker is interested in finding the saving habits of blue-collar workers in mining industry of United States, then all blue-collar workers in the industry throughout the country will form the population. A good example given by Sikana 2003. But we can also take a simple example that if a person is interested, if a researcher is interested in investigating the effect of the recent corona virus on the teaching methodology of the teachers in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, then all the teachers in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa will form the population. The full another definition is the full set of cases from which a sample is taken is called the population. Means all the observations for which the sample will be drawn is known as population. Similarly, another definition of the population is a group of individuals possessing one characteristic that distinguishing them from other groups is called population. For example, we might have a population made up of high school teachers, individuals who all teach in high schools or school counselors occupying counselor position in all schools will form the population of for that researcher. Similarly, the population can be homogeneous or heterogeneous. A population is said to be homogeneous when its every element is similar to each other in all aspects. Similarly, a population is said to be heterogeneous when all its elements are not similar to each other in all respect. And variables that make a population heterogeneous vary greatly from research to research. Common variables that make a population heterogeneous are gender, age, ethnicity, socioeconomic status, etc. Moreover, the homogeneity and heterogeneity of population depends on goal and nature of research. The second concept regarding the sampling, which is relevant to the sampling, is a target population. We discussed the concept of population. Now we discuss the concept of target population. And let me do the setting, little change in the setting. So we're talking the target population. A more specific level, researchers do not always study an entire population. We may draw samples, the researcher may draw samples not from all population because sometimes the whole population is very large. In practical operational terms, researchers study a target population, which is sometimes called sampling frame. This is the list or record of individuals in population that a researcher can actually obtain. This is the number of individuals or the events or the things which are actually in the access of the researcher from which he can draw the samples. For example, a researcher might obtain a list of all secondary high school teachers in one district. This list constitutes the target population or sampling frame. He may be interested in studying the some phenomena, some impact, he might be interested in some investigation relevant to secondary school in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, but he selects one school. He obtains the list of the teachers from one school or one district schools or from the two districts school teachers. It is his target population. At the most specific level, this is actually what we call the target population. Target population, in other words, also refers to the members who meet the particular criterion specified for research investigation. Element. An element is a single member of population. We will discuss the concept with the help of an example as well, the help of a diagram as well. So, an element is a single member of population. Each member of population is called element. If according to Zakara, if 1,000 blue-collar workers in particular organization consist of a population of interest for a researcher, then each blue-collar worker is element. Or, let us another example, if 500 pieces of machinery are to be approved after inspecting a few, after sampling, there would be 500 elements in this population. Similarly, according to another definition by Alvi 2016, a single entity of a given population which is not decomposable further is called an element. An element is a single entity of a population which cannot be decomposed into further smaller parts. An element can be an individual person or a household or a factory or a marketplace or a school. What an element is going to be depends on the nature of population. What a population is going to be depends on the nature of investigation. Means the population depends on the nature of investigation and element depends on the nature of population. Sample. Now we define a sample. It is a small representative part of population having same characteristics like population. In other words, a sample is a part of population with similar characteristics like that of population. It is a subset of population with similar characteristics. It comprises some members selected from population. population. In other words, some but not all elements of population would form sample because the sample is drawn from population. So actually the sample is found from the different elements selected through an appropriate method. A sample can also be defined as a group of a relatively smaller number of people selected from population for investigation purpose. It is very simple example, very good example. This diagram explains the concept of the element population sample. If we consider the whole area in this graph consisting of the stars, it is population. If you take a part of it, as we see here, it is sample. Each element of this population, including these elements, each element or each case is known as element. Subject. A subject is a single member of sample, just an element is a single member of population. If 200 members from total population of 1000 blue-collar workers form the sample for a study, then each blue-collar worker in the sample is subject. Coming back to this diagram, each part of each element of each case, each member of population is called element. Similarly, each member of the sample is called subject. Size of population. The next concept relevant to the sampling is the size of sample. The size of sample refers to the number of items to be selected from universe to constitute a sample. This is a major problem before researcher. The size of sample should not be excessively large or too small. It should be optimum. An optimum sample is one which fulfills the requirement of efficiency, representativeness, reliability, and flexibility. Parameter. The characteristics of population such as population mean, population standard deviation, and the population variance are referred to as parameters. Parameters are actually the calculations which are made from the population. If we compute the mean, population mean, it is parameter. If we compute the standard deviation from the population, it is parameter. Similarly, statistic is any characteristic of sample such as sample mean, sample standard deviation, sample variance is known as statistic. Mean, the calculations which we make from the sample like mean, like the standard deviation, like the variance, all these are called statistic. So the difference between parameter and statistic is that parameter is computed from the population while statistic is computed from sample. Sampling. Sampling is the process of selecting a sufficient number of elements from population so that a study of the sample and understanding its properties and characteristics would make it possible for us to generalize such properties and characteristics to population element. Sampling is the procedure. Sampling is the process of drawing samples. According to Alvey, the process through which a sample is extracted from population is called a sampling. Or we can say that sampling is nothing but sampling is just the procedure. Sampling is the way. Sampling is the method, the way, the process through which the samples are drawn from population. Sampling and its purpose. In an investigation, it is impossible to assess why sampling is done. The sampling is done because usually it is our common observation that in an investigation it is impossible to assess every single element of population. So as a group of people is selected for the assessment. It is impossible for the researcher, it is impossible for the investigator, it is very difficult for the investigator to consider, to investigate, to inquire about each and every element of population. So what is done that a group of people is selected for assessment. This group is called sample and the process is called sampling. On the basis of the information obtained from the sample, the inferences are drawn for the population. The inferences, the calculations, the investigation, the estimates which are drawn from the sample are considered for extended for a whole population. The more the sample is representative of population, the higher is the accuracy of inferences. If you are able to draw a representative sample, then higher reliable, higher accurate are the results derived on the basis of this sample. A sample is said to be representative when the characteristics of elements selected are similar to that of entire target population. Similarly, the results are said to be generalizable when the findings obtained from sample are actually true for entire target population. The sampling process may face the problems like systematic errors and sample biases, and which can be reviewed through appropriate techniques. Dear students, it is enough for this lecture. This part of lecture, the remaining part of the lecture and the references will be shared, will be discussed in the part 2 of this lecture. Thank you very much.